What's up, everyone? It's your old friend and your friendly ASIM YouTuber, Mr. Negative here, talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I haven't talked about this game in a long time, apart from when people have asked me questions on stream. But everybody wanted me to make this video about the recent statement of Texas Chainsaw Massacre from Gunn that they aren't doing any more content. Now, you've all read through the statement probably 100 times. I'm probably just going to quickly brief through it and just pick out some points that I wanted to talk about. Just on a general basis of this statement, though, I've never read such a up your own ass fucking statement from a development team before, or publisher, whatever you want to call them that. They are well and truly up their own assholes with this and sniffing as hard as they can of how good of a job they did with this game. They never once in the statement thanked any of us for participating in playing the game. Although they did allude to it, they never actually came outright and said, thank you for your support on this game. They all wanted to basically be like, me, gun, stay tuned. That's exactly what this is. Now, reading between the lines a little bit with this statement, where they do go on about, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they reached its full potential, you know, this game never reached its full potential, and the main reason being because of a lot of false promises that they made. They knew the game had a lot more potential already because they tried to develop that potential, and they missed completely. They couldn't do it. So transitioning that fact right there to this basically meaning that it reached its full potential with the current development team because they couldn't do anything. Black Tower struggled immediately when they took over this game. Way too slow with updates, breaking the game. You know, perk balancing and all that stuff just went out of the window because of all the bugs that were just infecting the game a lot more. And that's why it reached its full potential, because it couldn't go any further with the development team. That's what I'm believing this statement is saying. They're trying to sneakily throw the developers under the bus here, in my opinion. It's a shame, right? Because let's just put one thing out there real quick, because this has given me a bit of pleasure, really, for all the toxic positivity assholes that were in my comment section around this game, when I always said they need to do better, they need to do this, they need to do that to improve the game, and nothing ever happened. Nothing was ever done. And I'm not saying that my opinion was really the thing that would fix the game. It was basic stuff that needed to be implemented that a lot of people were talking about, not only me. So they never really listened to the community's feedback about things in the game in general. You know, level cap system, that was a mess. You know, level 99 and that's it. It just led me to leaving the game, and they promised they were going to increase the level cap, get some rewards with that, earnable currency. You know, we thought the game was going to go forward. And once they did that last dev stream where they were like, oh yeah, we can't do that, it's going to take a whole year of development and all this stuff. It's like they didn't want to try. And the core gameplay is there for this game. I thought it was a brilliant game. The atmosphere, the cinematics, all that stuff for the game was fantastic. I really enjoyed all of that. I loved the setting of it. You know, it really felt like you were in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and they did a really good job putting all that in. And yeah, they deserve a pat on the back for that. However, post-launch, I've never seen such a fucking mess since Evil Dead for content being dropped. Overpriced $10 fucking pay-to-win characters in a multiplayer game. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? I understand it's a license. You need to make money. And Evil Dead was the same thing. However, Evil Dead was at least decent on their prices for releasing the new characters. And you got a demon and you got the survivor. So, you know, you got that for like $10 with a bunch of cosmetics as well. And the cosmetics on Evil Dead were way better than this game. Let's be honest there. And sure, they definitely started making a lot better cosmetics, but the color palette was so dry. It's like, there's so much creativity that could have went in with being the 70s. And then, you know, they brought out Rush Week as well. And with, you know, talking about that last dev stream, Rush Week felt like their baby at that point. And they, you could just tell the way they were talking, they were so much more passionate about Rush Week, of people enjoying that game mode. Whereas maybe their focus shifted into wanting to create their own Rush Week game. And I'll get behind that, honestly. If I see something, you know, if they came out and, right, okay, we're going to make our own ASIM game. It's not going to be tied to any horror franchise. It's going to play like Rush Week, but with an essence more of Texas Chainsaw Massacre's perks and characters doing individual things and stuff like that. If they pulled all that together into a game and then they got crossovers into there, I feel like it would actually be a game that Dead by Daylight could get some competition to, you know, Dead by Daylight's never going to be dethroned, okay? If you love all these, like in an ideal world, all these ASIM games would be, you know, flourishing. Evil Dead would be getting updates, Killer Clowns would be getting updates, TCM, Dead by Daylight. Like, if those 4 games were still getting updates, still getting content, I would still be doing these games because they would be amazing just to rotate between them all. They're all really fun games, apart from DBD. I'm a bit out of that. So it's really disappointing and frustrating from at least a content creator standpoint, where you always want a little bit more from these games, and you're never thinking that your opinions are being too unrealistic on what they can achieve. You know, you're asking for maybe a battle pass system, or you're asking for some prestige, or, you know, something to grind for, as well as, you know, just as to tie us over until new content comes out. You know, just little things like that would make the game a lot more interesting, and TCM just never had that. It never had events, it never had a level cap increase. It was just the same thing over and over again of, you know, doing the same stuff. I just, there's no other words to put it, really, because that was ultimately the game. And it became like that because the game also became very unbalanced as well, unfortunately. They didn't know what they were doing with the balance of the game. You know, they tried to stop the rush meta. That didn't really work out too well. Then they started messing around with the Valve so much. They put Scout and buff Scout into oblivion. That just really just killed the balance even more in this game. Whereas, you know, it was too easy to play Family, and then Victim was just way too difficult half the time, where it just didn't even feel like it was worth playing. Some of the new characters that came out with their abilities and stuff, to be honest, I never played the last 2 new characters. You know, once they checked out of saying that weren't going to do with the currency and the level cap, I checked out immediately. I just went, nope. I uninstalled the game. I never made content for it anymore. I didn't want to touch the game because it's nothing worse than false promises. And then, you know, gloating about your false promises as well in this statement, you know, saying that we did so well at this game, you know, creating the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and getting it in your hands and being able to play it. And, you know, they're just constantly sniffing their own farts. They remind me of the Prius hybrid drivers on South Park.
Hey, is that a hybrid?
Oh yes, you've got one too, I see.
Yeah, I like to be a part of the solution and not part of the problem. Well, anyway, good for you.
Thanks!
But they love sniffing their own farts. That's just how I see Gun right now. Because they just didn't want to thank anybody for the support. And the way they communicated in on Twitter and Reddit and stuff to people, and, you know, I didn't pay attention to this mostly because it was always people in my chat that would tell me these things, and then they'd send me a screenshot of like, oh, look what this developer just said to this guy, and I'm like, you know, there's a sense of professionalism that you need in game development, and there's just they've just completely lacked professionalism doing all of what they have done for the lifespan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's a real shame. I'll say that, you know, I do feel bad for some people that genuinely enjoyed the game, that it's not going to get any more content. I will say that I'm very spiteful in terms of, you know what, I'm glad it happened because of all the fucking assholes that I had to deal with when I called shit like this that was going to happen all those freaking months ago. You know, I said it time and time again. They do not know what they're doing. They are out of their depth. They are literally fucking throwing shit at the wall and seeing if it will stick. And they conned people. It's just a massive con because it is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it's not necessarily just Gun's fault. It is the people that loved every little sliver of fucking breadcrumbs of updates that got put into this game. People ate that shit up. that it was like the best thing ever. You know, they turn around and say, well, you know, it could be worse. We could just not have a Texas Chainsaw Massacre game. It's like, that's not the point. The point is this studio dropped a game that was clearly unfinished and unpolished because it launched. So many perks weren't working. The balance was crazy. You know, the door slam bullshit that was going on and infinite stabs and everything. That was just like, you know, the things are just so easy to see in the gameplay that was just overlooked by the developers because they clearly wanted it, or the publisher just to clearly push the game out, because as most of these things happen in the gaming industry, they have a schedule. They need to stick to the schedule or they're going to lose money. So get the game out as they can and then, you know, fix it post-launch. This seems to be the repetitive attitude of game developers now and publishers. So it's kind of what's happened here with this game as well. I think, you know, if this game had another 6 months of development, they really thought through the process of, right, post-launch content, you know, we're going to get some more maps into the game because the game only had 3 maps originally. And how many maps did it end up with? 6 in total? I don't know off the top of my head. I know they released like one other map when I left the game. So, yeah, 6 maps. It's not really a great thing, is it? I think Killer Clowns launched with 6 maps by itself. It's now got 8 or 9 maps in the game. It's doing a lot better than TCM post-launch content, in my opinion. Not to mention, Killer Clowns is also getting an anniversary update where you're going to be able to unlock like 40 plus new cosmetics, which again is something that you'd like to see in an ASIM game. And Killer Clowns is definitely a fun game, and I'll be checking that out, the anniversary update for that for sure. But this kind of pleases me for it to finally end. TCM, I'm glad that it's done. They're gone. They're not going to be doing anything more with it. The only thing they're doing their last patch. I don't know what that entails because I don't pay attention to it. They're doing peer-to-peer matchmaking as well. For those of you who don't know that is usually where one person will be the host, so it doesn't rely on a server, basically. A lot of Friday the 13th worked like that. I think where whoever played Jason was the host or something along those lines. And DVD used to work like that, where the killer was always the host. So that's kind of what's going to be happening in TCM there. But yeah, this game was just overall a fucking mess. You know, swapping developers mid-cycle, that got me hyped up a little bit. You know, it was kind of a double-edged sword, really, though, because you didn't know if it was going to go one way or the other, really, as well. And it went the wrong way, bringing in a new development team. But I just can't believe this statement. I really can't. I've never read something so like it at a game shutting down, like not even thanking their player base, and people want to support this fucking company. I don't know, man. I think Gun, they need to really step it up in the PR department. They need to get their own in-house development team, stick to what they know, and make sure they can achieve people's expectations of modern multiplayer games, if them being live service and dropping in content. Don't be dropping fucking $10 pay-to-win bullshit in your game and expecting people to eat it up. And so many people left the game because of that. And so, you know, let's look back real quick. Why loads of people left this game? And it was their decision making that ultimately led to it. It was them removing PC from crossplay because of the hackers. And the reason there were so many hackers was because the Xbox version on PC did not have an anti-cheat. So there was so many people hacking on that version of the game. And then they just completely removed PC from crossplay. And how long did that last? Like a month or something? Yeah. You're already splitting up your player base and upsetting 1/3 of your player base that ultimately did just leave the game and never came back. And you could just see it time and time again with each update. Something would break. The game would crash on Xbox every time. Like, you get a penalty for crashing. Like, there was just so much wrong with this. And like I said, it's a damn shame because the core gameplay elements were there. It was a fun experience when it lasted. But the post-launch was an absolute fucking disaster. And they want to say they reached their full potential and they did their best and all this bullshit in this statement. Like they did an amazing job Sure, their bank account will say they did an amazing job, but ultimately this game has left everybody with a sour taste in their mouth, just as much as Evil Dead did with fucking Saber Interactive. And this is why the future of ASIM IP-based games is just not going to work. It really isn't. You need to make your own ASIM game and do crossovers, just like Dead by Daylight's doing, because then you have the freedom to do whatever the fuck you want in terms of bringing in what cosmetics you want to do, battle passes, fucking, I don't know, do a ranked, do all this prestige stuff without having the approval of the IP holders, because horror IP holders have some weird toffee nose shit about them where they think they know what's best all the time, and they are very stingy with their IP, and I've seen it happen on Evil Dead. It happened on TCM, where they just couldn't get the rights to the characters that everybody wanted as well, and ultimately just led to a lot of disappointment. So that's my take on this. There's nothing else I can really say. You know, it's partly Gun's fault, but it's also partly the people that fucking ate up every breadcrumb of an update and thought that it was amazing and that they were doing God's work in developing this game. And, you know, that's a problem, really. You can love a game, but don't love every update, please. Like, in development, you know, you need that criticism. You need that constructive criticism and feedback to understand how your game's actually not working and what can be improved in the game. If they're putting stuff out and people love it and it's mediocre, well, guess what? That's all you're going to deal with in the future is mediocre. You need to push them to do better. And unfortunately for Gun, they never saw that. They always believed they were doing a really, really fantastic job, judging by this statement. And yeah, I just think it's extremely rude that they never thanked anybody for their support in this statement. It's actually a joke. It really is. But yeah, that's it. That's the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre content. Evil Dead has also been delisted from PlayStation and Epic Games and all that stuff. I still think it's on the Xbox store though, which is interesting. But yeah, it's a sad day because really, when you think about it, like I mentioned before, if you had those ASIM games all go neck and neck, trying to siphon players here and there, and you know, being innovative and bringing out new content, that would have been a really interesting world to live in. But unfortunately, we're not in that world, and I've had to move on to other games that are actually getting updates, good or not. I don't believe in this elitist attitude from these publishers, thinking they know what's best for their game all the time without listening to the community feedback. I think it's so bizarre because even Marvel Rivals is doing that now. They know what's best and they're not listening to people's feedback, and people get bored and sick and tired of the same shit being just left in the game for too long, and you know, them not listening to the real problems. But yeah, that's it. What's next for Gun? Stay tuned. Bye.